Y'all wanna get turned? I heard that you trying to go climb to the top. I start from the bottom, it's kinda like putting on socks. You ready? Yeah, y'all ready or not? Don't let me get hot, though. Clean like a mop, whole world is shot. This place gon' knock, this place gon' rock. Y'all ready or not? Ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues, punch that clock. You ready or not? You ready or ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues, punch that clock. Ready or not? You ready or hey.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Payday Profits. I'm your host, Samson Jagoras, and each episode we're unpacking the wisdom, knowledge, and expertise of entrepreneurs to help you guys save time and level up. And today I'm sitting here with Jordan Kamps, serial entrepreneur, is doing a ton of crazy stuff in the world of concrete and bedrock, and we're going to get into it. He owns like 5 companies at this point. But we were talking offline before we started, and generally all the friendships and relationships I have cover 4 different things. The gym and fitness, all these dudes like to get after it. They love the Lord, they love their families, and they love business. And so Jordan is that dude. So, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And not in that order.
Yeah, not necessarily in that order.
All right.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So to just frame it up for everybody, you've been an entrepreneur since you were 19, 20?
Yeah, first business started at about 21. Finishing college, I started my first business and moved here to Colorado from Michigan. So that was my start.
Which was that in the same industry that you're in now?
Still running that business, and that's Bedrock Slingers. That's where I started. First conveyor truck, and we bought that in Colorado out in Grand Junction and brought it here. Had to get my CDL, get it figured out, and I was trying to do that as I was finishing college from 1,200 miles away. So that was my introduction.
That is awesome. And as you may have figured out, he did it for a girl. I'm assuming that's why you came to Colorado, huh?
I did. I had the opportunity to work here 2 summers with my future in-laws who pour foundations. So that was my first taste of residential construction.
Yeah. Picking
up forms and setting those and pouring concrete foundations for houses. So that was my first taste of it. And then when my wife and I got married, took us about 5-6 months, and we both said, Colorado's are going to be our home. And then it was, well, what are you going to do? We got to find work. So we made it on church. That's where we want to raise our children, get married, move there. And now I got to find a job. So that was our start.
That's awesome. So what'd you go to school for? What'd you study in college?
I did go for business. I was, thought I was going to be an attorney. And
okay.
my father wisely brought me to an attorney firm with business that does business contracts and things of that nature. Best thing he ever did.
This is going to be your life, son.
This is your life. This is reality for your first 10 years. You're going to work in a basement. You're going to do everything that, helps the guys that are the partners up above.
Yep.
Maybe you got a chance in 10 to 20 years to do this, and you're going to be in an office, and this is what you're going to read and write and do. And I said, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me. So it took me that long to figure out that's not the path. So I stayed in business school, finished in 3.5 years, did summer school. I was plowing and got married between junior and senior year, finished that last one from Kelvin College in Grand Rapids, and we had started a home and a business in my senior year in those last 3 to 5 months, bought a truck, said this is what we're doing, and went for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was why not go work for somebody else? Like, why did you decide to go into business for yourself?
I look back now and see that as my dad is a fantastic entrepreneur. It was in the family. I have uncles in business, grandpa, and you don't know how your brain's working when you're 10 to 15 years old, but around the table you're talking about business and what's happening. And I think one of the real advantages I had was I looked through the lenses of entrepreneurship is normal. Owning
right.
your own business is, why wouldn't you?
Totally.
This is totally common. And then from there, when I started working for others, I had a mind that said, no, I could do that better. I could do this differently. And I had a fire at an early age, 17, 18, get cut from the basketball team. And then it was, wow, my reality is that I'm not going to be a basketball player forever. I got to look past, what's coming. And so it was like innate. It was in me. Like, I know that that's what I'm going to do. I had confidence, even though for no reason. I didn't have a reason to be confident, but I was, and just said, I'm going to outwork. I'm going to outdo. I'm going to make it. And I was thankful I was able to start early, because I get that the transition for our audience, if you're in your 35, 40, job and all these things going on, I had the advantage of starting, but it was still, I had nothing. We were down to $1,000 in the checking account, and it was, you do this or you don't have groceries, and you do this because mama's there going, how are we going to make this work?
Right.
I had a truck to pay for. I had bills. I had to pay for my insurance up front. So just all those things combined to say, wow, I got to make this happen. So that was my start.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, other side of that token, starting later, you have more skills, more knowledge, maybe more money in the bank.
Yes.
You're a little bit clearer on who you are, and you're maybe a little more emotionally intelligent to handle it. I think there's this gross misconception that everybody who's an entrepreneur was like 12 years old slinging candy bars, and then they went and started a company when they were 20, and they don't realize that that's actually not the case. There's tons of great stories of late start entrepreneurs who've killed it. The one I love, I think probably the most, is Vera Wang, who's one of the most famous designers. She didn't even design her first piece of clothing until she was like 39. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
we're still trying to figure it out. But you've been in it for 20 years.
Yes.
And your businesses are humming now, which is incredible. When you were telling me kind of before how things are going and how you've diversified. But I can't imagine the first couple years were all, sunshine and rainbows. What were some of the biggest road bumps that you went through? And hindsight's 2020. If you know then, what you know now, what would you have maybe done differently?
You learn how to hire, and you learn what you're looking for in people instead of finding that out as you go. I knew I had to be scrappy, but it takes a toll and a sacrifice early on to family and time, to where, that's maybe part of the hard part. You're going to have to grind for a while to get this thing up and over. And that's where buying maybe an existing company, you don't do that as much.
Right.
The benefit is you learn a lot as you go. You learn about all the little things, and when you make a little mistake, it isn't amplified so much. When you're running a business that's got employees and revenue, and you make a mistake, that pain can be greater.
Yeah.
So I learned that you try things slowly. You don't just burst in, because you can really mess things up fast.
Right.
So hit singles is what I like to say, and then doubles. Don't go for that home run right away. If it's all or nothing, it's usually not a risk that's worth it. You'll get there, little pieces at a time. Obstacles was I didn't have cash at the beginning. I made the mistake of thinking that renting was foolish and owning your home was wise, and it wasn't in my first 5 years. So I dumped a bunch of money into a mortgage, and all of a sudden I couldn't use that money. I didn't understand finances, how to use money, how to leverage, and so I'm broke. I got a nice home and I'm broke. And so I didn't have money for inventory. I'm buying 2-3 pieces of drain tile. I'm, barely filling my tank. I had time where I was running my fuel tank from half to empty every day. Just like I don't have $300 extra to put into my fuel. Just silly things. But when I look back, it's like I made that very hard on myself.
Cash flow management, man. That's
Cash
one of the
flow.
things that'll keep you awake at night. Whew.
Yes.
I know it well.
Yes. So you really want to start with a little cash and have some room to make a mistake, but have room where you just got to start and go. So,
yeah. And if you already have a cushy gig, it's get a rolling start, right? Like, don't just burn the boats necessarily. There's a lot of things that you can get in order over the course of 3-6 months
yes.
to be prepared in order to do that, and especially in an industry like contracting where you're at, it's heavy on relationships, and those it's not as simple as, the first person you contact is going to say, oh yeah, we got a job for you next week. It might take 3, 6, 9, 12 months to really get that going.
It did.
Yeah.
And then I thought I would have people that knew my family members that would say, oh, I'll give them a try. And that wasn't that easy. They were looking at me going, I've never seen a truck like that. Who are you? You're just a punk 22-year-old, I'm not sure I'm ready to trust you with this yet. So you have got to overcome all those obstacles. And, but that's part of the reward. When you do, it's very satisfying.
Heck yeah. So Bedrock Slingers, 19 years in business.
Yes.
And then you now have 4 other companies, if I remember correctly.
3 other entities, and then now I'm doing some real estate under some different LLCs. So I guess there's more, but those
is that
are
more like
companies.
personal investing type stuff?
No, that's desiring to separate land from the business in case of a big class action or something where it's not tied together.
Smart.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe even some long-term strategy of just owning the real estate and not necessarily owning the company.
There's always a possibility of down the road, if I'm selling pieces and there's, industrial land's really valuable, more and more so.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm learning I'm kind of in the land business too, to operate what we need to operate out of, having stockpiles. And so having that land, I look at it as that's long-term income for me. Even if I sold the business, I've got revenue that's still coming in because there's going to be squatters on my land that are saying, can I rent that to operate my business, or even the ones I sold to them maybe. So
yeah, 100%.
Gives me options. Yeah.
So how long into the business before you started your second company?
So 03 start, and 09 I start my first division that's unique and separate, which is called Ground Solutions. And that came on the tail end of a recession. We were residential. We were taking what was easy. I didn't have an eye towards diversity and understanding that I'm riding this wave. It's great. It was really strong. But boy, did I get a lesson in 08 when everything dries up, interest rates change. I'm not understanding the market. I'm not seeing the supply of homes going, when this crashes, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And we learned. So we lost a bunch of employees, guys you've trained. That's a tough situation when you're, instead of hiring, you're saying, guys, I can't keep you here busy past noon. And that was painful. They had to go look for other things just to keep, their food on the table. So at the end of that, that's when we said we need a different revenue stream. We've got to do something. So when it was the hardest, I chose to buy a used truck and say, we're starting in a different line. We're gonna scrap through this and find a way. And I found something that, again, people were not doing, which was placing materials in a different way through what's called a blower truck, pneumatically pushing it through a hose pipe. So
that's amazing. Yeah, the recession is one of the best times to start a business if you have the wherewithal to dig in and dig deep, because there's a lot of competition that just fades away.
Gets cleaned out. Yep.
Gets cleaned out. Money gets a little bit cheaper.
Right.
Employees get a little bit cheaper.
Can find them.
Trucks get a little bit cheaper. Exactly. the talent that, the best talent typically already has a job until they don't. We all see what's happening right now with all these big tech companies laying off, 10, 14% of their inventory of employees. It's 1,100 people for Meta, I think is what that number was. That's a lot.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think the lesson in that, and I got my start in 2008. That's about right when you and I met.
Yes.
And I was a newly crowned broker, had negative money to my name, and I just thought, like, dang, this is crazy. Is this how business always is? I had no idea. But it was a lesson, man, because hindsight's 2020. And in 2018, I was thinking kind of similarly, like, man, things are really good. 2.89% unemployment. Like, we're going to get rocked. I don't know what it's going to be, but some sort of black swan's probably going to be the thing that kicks it off. COVID happens. We throw more money after it. It never really changes. How did you guys do through that period? Was that tumultuous for you, or were you able to navigate it because you were a little more diversified?
You're talking COVID specifically?
For you guys, yeah.
Yeah, we were named essential. We were at our happiest place because traffic was about as bad as I'd seen it before. I don't think anybody understood how fast the infrastructure was going to fill up in Colorado. I didn't.
Right.
And it was getting just nuts. And then they cleared the roads for us.
Right.
So we were able to drive down the roads in a way that we hadn't for years. And we were about as efficient as we could be.
Wow.
So how homes were being built, commercial buildings were still going up, landscaping was happening, and we were in a place where we had all these, just badges and papers in the truck saying we've been named essential, we're in construction. And some of our people, more of them worked from home from an admin level. I think that all taught us that, that's very doable. But also you realize when you're meeting people, doing sales, what a difference it is not being able to be face-to-face in an office where you can't collaborate the same. That's a big deal. Right. To where now I value and go, yeah, you can work from home sometimes, but there's just a real benefit to being around each other, and things happen better when you're in the same room. There's efficiencies. Yeah. You're understanding people. You're looking at them going, there's something wrong, isn't there? And you can actually take care of your team in a way you have no idea if they're working from home. You're a team. Yeah. So there's positive and negatives, but we did well through that. And then everything came back to so-called normal, and our pain is probably supply chain now because of what has happened. But things have been good and strong. We got through that pretty well.
Were you anticipating something happening? Given your experience in 2008, 2009, starting in something new, we're sitting in 2020. The market hasn't really corrected. Now you're smarter, right? Money's cheaper. You're seeing, wow, we're largest expansion since World War II. Everybody's on cloud nine saying, hey, the party's not going to end. Even in real estate, they're like, it's Colorado. The market always goes up. I'm like, okay. So I got nervous, but what were you thinking kind of leading into that?
I was, because of 08, it caused me to look at business differently and say, don't always take what's easy. Make sure you've got diversified revenue stream. Pick customers that are harder to get, but that will be busy when residential construction isn't.
Right.
We started on-demand concrete, which is a volumetric truck. And for those who don't know what that means, it's looks like a big dump truck. It's got a split bin, rock sand. It's got a powder bin on the back, and we blend concrete on site with an auger. So you're used to seeing ready-mix trucks with a large barrel. These have all dry ingredients and all come to the back via different gates, and everything's in quantities and then gets blended together. So it allows us to put very fast-setting products together that you wouldn't want to put in a ready-mix truck. It allows us to give a value to the customer. There's no waste. If they stop pouring and they thought they needed 10 yards and they used 8, I bill them for 8 and drive 2 yards of material that's not mixed yet down to another job or refill on top of it. So we offer a bit of a niche inside that concrete world. I started that with a partner, and part of that was they're in a very different field. It's a field that's going to get bigger, and I like businesses that can grow to a decent size. But also, man, all our customers are going to be very different. And we intentionally stayed away from residential. We had to start a little bit with kind of the easy stuff, which was little porches, right, driveways, just some of your basic stuff. But as soon as we could, we started developing fast-setting products and really going towards utility customers, infrastructure, roadway, because we saw on the horizon, residential has to slow down. But federal money is getting pumped into our infrastructure. I see that as a 20-year game plan. Well, that's where we want to be. And when I got to talk to people that ran volumetric companies, they told me about the vision and really helped me see it for what it could be. And so we adopted that, and we would oftentimes say no thank you to guys that were saying, we're not getting serviced by Ready Mix. Can you come help us? No, sure. We got to keep capacity for those guys. Those are the ones we want.
That's vision.
That's vision. That's what we needed. So
yeah, I mean, it helps you say no to stuff. I mean,
it does. And that's hard.
That's very hard.
That takes discipline because it's easier path. But then when that key customer calls that you're trying to get and says, I need 3 loads today, and you don't have, because you've already promised over there, you've got limited resources. When you have the ability to say yes, something else changes. When you have to say no in that moment, you might have missed an opportunity you might not get back for 5 years. That's reality.
What was it about the volumetric on-site concrete that made it so unique compared to what was happening in the industry? Because entrepreneurship is just looking for problems and saying, hey, I think here's a better solution, right? So what was it that was so special? Because this is me ignorantly asking. I don't know enough about the concrete world to tell you, oh, great idea. I see your vision.
Right. So when you look at, typically when in a roadway situation where guys have to come in, they get one night of closure from DOT, and that road's got to be basically being able to be driven on by 5 a.m. the next morning. We have roads like that all over the place. California, busy markets have roads that they don't want shut during the rush hour.
Yeah.
So when you have a product that will set up in 2 to 3 hours, so someone can come in, cut a slab in the middle of the night with 1 lane closure, pour their concrete at 2 a.m. and put dowels in, compact the subsurface, pour it, and by 5 a.m. put a semi-truck on that concrete.
Whoa.
That's not what you can do with Ready Mix.
Right.
That's not possible. So ours are a batch truck on wheels, so we can go anywhere and set up. We can do load on site, which was something that we were very familiar with our slingers, where we'd bring all the gravel to one place and say, let's utilize end dumps and cheaper transportation costs to get the product there, and then just place all day. That's the power of a stone slinger. We're shooting it or placing it through a blower truck. So kind of the same principle. We could take a concrete truck, and instead of having this large batch plant, which takes up a lot of space, is major capital, and then you can't move it, right? It's there for theoretically forever.
Right.
But as your work goes away from you, you've got to drive further and further to get to it. So you're trying to set up.
It gets worse.
It does. And so we can cover up into the mountains. We can bring 500 tons of material to a job site and then just load 2 trucks and just feed and pour large slabs. We can do this fast setting product because it's not being mixed inside of a drum. And you get there and your customer has a delay. Well, I'll sit here and wait here for an hour and take care of you. And then when you're ready, we pour. You can't do that with a ready mix. They've got to throw that concrete away after 90 minutes from batching.
Oh, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so it has a shelf life, a very short one. In the heat of the summer, it's getting worse. I mean, it's ready to flash. It's setting up. It's getting hard as soon as you place it in heat, because that's what concrete wants is heat. That's what
dries it out, right?
That's what's making the chemical reaction happen faster. So it was a niche. Another thing that attracted me was we were already in the CDL world. We're in commercial trucks. We have yards that have aggregate in them. We have loaders. So it took all those infrastructure pieces, and I was able to share it from an overhead perspective in a yard space where we could take the same type of trucks into there, have places to load, have loaders, and there was all those efficiencies gained. So we were looking to add on pieces where we were already strong.
Right.
I didn't want to start something totally different. I wanted to utilize what we had and had capacity for.
Man, that's so good. You guys are listening to that. Be taking notes. One of the things I know about industries like yours is they're incredibly capital intensive.
Yes.
You're having slinger trucks and concrete trucks. I mean, that's not cheap.
No.
How do you manage and manage cash? And do you put debt on those things? Are you paying for them in cash? What's your thought process in and around, the capital intensive part of your business?
Well, I come at it from a faith-based perspective. So for me, debt isn't evil, but it's not desirable. And while I believe you can use debt to grow, there's also a time at which you put everything in danger by over leveraging.
Yep.
So my goal early on in business was to grow at a pace at which I could start paying things off and not grow so rapidly that I owe everything on 4 trucks. And had I hit 08 in that situation, I'd have probably coughed up either the company or several pieces back to the bank and would have lost a lot of it. So we had, by the time I hit my 3rd truck, we had enough cash to pay almost that whole thing right then and there as cash. And then I went backwards for a while. 08, everything slowed down. And then we started buying new equipment. So I started leveraging bank money. And then we got to a place where maybe 13, 14 years in, we were getting close to being able to pay cash again. But then with growth came large purchases beyond trucks, which was land. And
right.
There's loaders and all the stuff you need in a yard, and then office personnel and desks and pickups for some of these employees. So you kind of come backwards again. So it's like we'd gotten into a good cycle and then it came backward. So we just managed very well. But I'm also big on not living a lifestyle that is glamorous, right? You plug this back into the business. If you're serious about it and you want this to be long term, I'm not buying boats and motorcycles and extra homes and things that it looked on paper like you could afford.
Sure.
But I wanted that back in the next truck. I wanted to get that risk out of there and pay off this equipment, knowing that down the road, if I'm blessed, I could probably have something extra.
Right.
But we just didn't want a lot of debt. We didn't want the bank to be able to take everything away. So we were just very fiscally responsible that way.
Yeah, man, I can tell you just from experience, because I think similarly to you do. And sometimes you feel like, man, I just feel like I'm going so slow. Everybody around me seems like they're just going so much faster.
Yes.
But you have that little clock in the back of your head of like, man, something is going to break. I just don't know when. For me, in 2018, I was getting my life ready. I mean, we were selling off our personal real estate. We moved out of 3,400 square feet to 1,500 square feet. Like I was ready to go.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened, I'm like, man, maybe I got it wrong. I was 2 years early, right? And then we literally move knowing that I had some good W-2 income and I was going to leave it for good from the technology company. And so I got to do one more loan because for the next however many years, I'm going to not be very lendable, So we make the move February 2020. I think it was like 2 weeks later, the lockdown happened, I'm like, damn, I knew I was right,
Didn't
So,
regret that then, did you?
I didn't regret it then. Thankfully, we were, in a good position. We had some cash stacked up, and we were able to sell one more piece of real estate because the market was still relatively hot.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always preparing for winter. And I think there's this over exaggeration about you got to have your money out there because of inflation, right? You got to, your dollar's getting weaker every day. Sure. But when things go on sale and they're on sale for 70, 80, 90% off, I can get 10x ahead of you by just being a little cash conservative in that situation.
Yeah, it's a blend. It's a balance.
It totally is.
But I saw people grow a lot faster than me after I started business, and then saw many companies give it all back or just totally bust. And I thought, well, we got to keep all of our equipment, go through this. And I had enough of a nest egg to start a whole new line needing to help, our diversification. And because I had been that way, we were able to go ahead and get a new truck in a different area started. And now that's blossomed for the last 12 years. So
that's amazing. What's the long game for you? You've been very conservative, 19 years in business, plowing everything back in. I know we were talking a lot about how important our families are to us and making sure you have time to be there and be present because you don't get that back.
Right.
But what's the end game? Is it maybe sometime in the future sell it, or is it just create options for yourself? What is it?
I didn't go into business with a goal of anything but let's figure this out and make a living.
Right.
It got to the point where I started to understand what I enjoyed. And that was not necessarily to carry on the operational phase of the business in detail. Once I felt like I got the things in good shape, I tried to find a good general manager and was blessed to find men either from church or that saw the world the way I did and cared for people and respected them and could hire, people of integrity. When I saw that all be in place, I felt, okay, I can step back. And then I'd get that itch. I've got to do something different. I'm ready to start. I see this, or I see something brewing. And that's where I knew I was passionate about. So my end game is not defined.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here going, I'm trying to retire at this age. I'm trying to get a certain amount in the bank, or I'm trying to do this with my life so that I'm free of these things. Each phase, I realize I change and I grow, and what I valued before is a little bit different. I'd love to see my children have an option to come into the business and maybe be a part of it, or maybe start their own thing, and I can help them. I can be their coach. But I'd love to see it continue if they wish for it. I've got a lot of great families that we represent that I don't want that to go away. If I sell, I have no control over that. So I like the fact that it can be long-term. I've told my wife I'm not going to start anything for a little while yet, so I've got to honor that because you put a lot in. When you start it, I had to grind again these last 4 or 5 years, starting a whole new arm, a whole field I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I loved it, but I also started to realize I'm taking too much time away from family. So what's it worth? And I'm not motivated by money. Been blessed richly. I'm more motivated by giving. To be able to give more than I make is a special area of life, and I didn't expect to be there at 40, but I've been blessed that way, and that's now a big deal. So I could see myself in a position where I start to wean away from the business maybe and give of my time in a place that's important to me. I want to be able to keep giving. Affecting Christian schools and families and churches is at my heart. So I've been able to do that, and that means a lot to me. So that's about as defined as I can give you.
No, it's so good. Again, right? Misconceptions of entrepreneurship, because you're not on the cover of Forbes magazine, so they see Elon Musk or whatever it might be, and everybody thinks like, oh, you build this company and then you take it public or you sell it or whatever. But for me personally, it's about lifestyle design. It's about doing stuff that, one, I just enjoy. I think it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I own a gym is because I love it. I just genuinely love exercise. And so I could build a home gym, or I could build this 8,000 square foot facility with 16 trainers and help people, do their thing. Right. But I love real estate and I love development and I love putting deals together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think what we're all chasing is ultimately purpose. Right. And
yes.
Business is definitely a path to that. There's like 4 freedoms. I've talked about it a ton on the podcast. Freedom of time is the first one. Then you get freedom of money, then freedom of relationship. You get to pick and choose who you work with. And then the ultimate is freedom of purpose. And I think having a self-managing company, or companies in your case, where you can be kind of up above and doing the stuff that God put you here to do, which is pour into your community and give back and do those kinds of things, is the ultimate end game. So I'm with you, dude. I think that
defines it well. It doesn't have to be specific, but we're in principle. Yeah.
It's purpose, man. That's what said it well. That's what pushed me out was I have these businesses that I'm running. I'd get up in the morning at 3:30, go to one, shower, go to the other one all day, then go back to the other business. And then I'd have like an hour for my family because I'm just a friggin' zombie. You know, and I'm like, is this worth it? Am I gonna pick my head up in 16 years when my daughter's going off to college and be like, I'm really glad I did that? Or do I pivot now, start taking control of my time with the long game of getting more control over my money with the end game of having more freedom of relationship and purpose? And so far it's working out pretty good. Thank the Lord for that.
That's right.
What's generally, as an entrepreneur, you're pretty optimistic. I know I am always like glass half full. I'm always looking at the positive, but there's probably a few highlight reels that stick with you of like, these are times when I really screwed up or I really did it wrong. Impart some wisdom on the audience about maybe some of your worst moments or hardest times or things that you wished you maybe did a little different.
I would say one of my failures was trusting a man that I didn't know well. And it was a little bit of a too good to be true situation, and gave him cash, and I never should have. Lost control of it. So I find that if I'm going to trust somebody with anything, they're going to work with me a while. And I made the mistake of trusting someone way too quickly.
Yeah.
All I lost was money and got a good lesson. So,
yeah.
That's
There's plenty of those in entrepreneurship.
So I started a company that I wouldn't call it was not a success. It was I named it Bedrock Drilling early on. Had a partner, a great guy named Matt, and we started something and had not done our due diligence on the drilling itself and how it worked. The nice thing is that what I think I did badly was not do the research, and what I did well was get out of it quickly, and don't take this down a rabbit hole and just fight it as if, boy, I thought I had a great idea, maybe I didn't. And when you get that realization, this might not be the best business plan and the best way to go.
Right.
Don't drag that out for 2 years.
Yeah. Don't let your ego get in the way.
No, ego is a bad thing, especially in that department. So we got out of that fairly quickly and was able to sell our money, give the machine back to the company that sold it, because they sold it on a promise that it was going to drill these type of holes really well, and it didn't. And came away with a lesson. I think that there's always obstacles you're going to face, but you got to be resilient. You've got to be just understanding that everything you touch isn't going to work out, and just because you had success in one area doesn't guarantee over here that I did good here, if I touch this business, not necessarily.
I call that the doctor syndrome. Like, I went to med school and I'm a doctor, so that means I instantly know everything about real estate or business.
Yes. But there's fundamentals that our listeners need to understand, and number one is people. If you've got for me, I've got equipment and I've got yards and places to drive them, and you can get customers. But if you don't have people that are safe drivers and that care about the company and that treat your customer well, you don't have a recipe for long-term success, repeat business. So I can't emphasize it enough. Get the people right, and everything else typically follows suit. Yeah, you got to have a product that works and sells and a service that people want. But if you don't have the right people, you're wasting your time.
How do you get those people to buy in? Because sometimes obviously it's pretty obvious you just have the wrong person. Right?
Yeah.
But even then, I've had times where I've had people who, I see so much potential in them, and I think they could be so great, and they do align with the core values, but it's like they're just not quite fully bought in. Have you found anything that works? how to get them over the hump, or is it really just a desire thing ultimately?
Well, for someone to buy in, I think they have to understand that there's potential for advancement. If there's somebody that's capable, they don't want to stay in the same spot. So growth is important in that level, because if they don't see an owner that's saying, let's get into new areas and actually have growth potential, which then gives options for rewards, making more, a different title, promotion, more responsibility. I think, anybody that's capable wants to be able to say, I can do more.
Yes.
I see a path to be able to do it.
So good.
I also believe that treating especially managers like owners is important. So I try to show open books. I give them the P&Ls every month. We talk about them. We look at where we're doing well and where we're not and why. And I give them the leash to go solve those problems. And I also reward them with a percentage of the profits at the end of the year. So it's not like, hey, the company did great, thank you, you're on a salary base, I hope you feel good too. It's, we did this together, and you were instrumental in, avoiding extra expenses. You helped push revenue up, and bottom line went up with it. So here's a chance to share in that too. And I think that they feel empowered to be like an owner in my company. And with us starting several, I need those key people, and I want them to see it as theirs as well.
Totally.
So that's, I think, very key in it too. And now I've got them hiring so that they're taking the responsibility of who they're going to see every day. It's not Jordan said, hey, you need to work with this person now.
Right.
Now they're part of that process. And so really giving them that ownership, I think, helps.
Do you have any kind of employee equity programs or anything like that?
I don't. We've looked at that a couple different ways, and the challenging part is that when people come in and they're way down the line, there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of value there. That's a harder thing to put in place.
Sure.
I've had some personal talks with some of my guys saying, if I ever sold, I'm going to take care of you. I don't have equity on paper for them, but they've learned that I'm going to do what I say, and we'll take good care of those people if that day ever comes. But then giving them a percentage of the profits, I think it makes them feel like they get the cash then, at the end of each year. So I think that's kind of how I run it. But I also want to be able to save something for my kids down the line and say, if someone's in equity and that relationship doesn't work out and they're not here for long term, now we've got to buy them back out.
Right.
I haven't gone that path. Is it right for some? Probably. For us, I haven't done it that way.
No, that's good. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, right? I have another friend who's on the show actually who built an employee-owned company, right? And it's doing really well. Other ones, stock options, right? Mm-hmm. So there's just a ton of different ways that you can do it. I'm just always interested to know, because I know for me as a person inside of a company, if equity's not on the table, I'm not interested. But that's because I'm an entrepreneur, right? So, but I would imagine that those are probably some of the people within the organization that say, hey, Jordan, I see an opportunity over here for us to go start this X line of business. Are some of those people who became partners, or are they people who you knew outside of the space and you guys came together to buy some of those and build some of those other lines of business?
The latter would be true for when we started On Demand Concrete and Flat Work, coming together with a person that was similar in faith and had quit his job and was ready to essentially start the same thing I was. And we got to meet before both of us started that.
Wow.
He quit his job.
Special thing.
He was ready to go, and we met, and I said, we're going to either be competitors or we can work together. Which way do we want to go? I wasn't looking for a partner necessarily. I knew I needed someone strong in operations because I was at a point where I couldn't be there and run a truck every day like I'd started the other ones. So equity made sense, but he also put money on the table. And we haven't had that with any of the other ones. They weren't in a position to put money in there, but I will treat my top people as stockholders if we sell. That's going to be automatic for me because I know I didn't get there by myself. So, it's probably something I could write down and say, here, you have equity in this. I've told some of them that. So that's every owner does it different.
I mean, I know some people that are of the mindset of like, keep it small, keep it all. You said something that was super crucial that I firmly believe, which is it's really hard to get people to stay and bring people on the bus your vision's too small. It doesn't keep growing and getting bigger. So as the owner, you're showing them like, hey, I have a responsibility to you guys to make this bigger, to create more opportunity, to create more management positions, and so on and so forth. Because the stats are real. I think it's like for every 10 months that somebody stays in the same role, they're 10% more likely to churn out. So if they came on at 100% in a year in the same role, they're like 90% with it. You know what I mean? So it's very, very, very important as the entrepreneur, as the visionary, you got to build a bigger opportunity vehicle so more people can buy into it.
I agree. And I forgot to say, we do profit sharing. And I think that's another, some companies do it, some don't, but I'm a strong believer in, we set a budget, and when we're over that, here's the pot, spread it among your team.
Cool.
That goes a long way.
Heck yeah, it does. That's amazing.
Yep.
So you and your wife have been together for a really long time, going on 20 years.
20 wonderful years, yes.
20 wonderful years. At the very beginning of the pod, you said we started the business. Was she your partner? Was she intimately involved in the business? Is she involved in the business today?
The funny part is that when my wife and I moved to Colorado, within the first 2 months, we were expecting.
Okay.
So 21-year-olds expecting, and she's trying to grade rock in the basement while I'm shooting it. So she's in a full labor position, and she's dealing with morning sickness, and bless her heart, she went after
What
it,
a rock star.
and did it. And then she, once we started a family, it was important to us that mom stays home and raises them, and we're going to figure out how to do that on one income. And so she was involved with invoicing and a part of the business from that standpoint, from a bookkeeping standpoint, and then eventually became just payroll. And that's what she still does. She's still involved with it. She's absolutely a partner in the business.
Yeah.
However you want to slice that, but she wants it to be family as her job. And hey, I can still be attached and keep busy with something I can do from home. That works well. And
it's good. It's good. And I believe too, for our wives who do take on that responsibility, it's also important for them to have some identity outside of just being mom, because they're incredibly capable. My wife's the same way. She still does real estate. She still does design. She's actually the creative director for this podcast. So all the beautiful designs that you see, and she's incredibly talented. But early in our relationship, I don't think we could have been that intimately intertwined. I'm sure that comes with some challenges, and we don't have to get into that. But
we didn't work side by side. Eventually I had an office and would go there and come home and see her.
That's good.
For some people that might work to work in an office all day. I don't know that it would have been our favorite or the best. So, but she's involved. She's in a sense going to have everything if I'm gone.
Right.
And so
she'll be the new CEO.
I don't think she wants to be CEO. I think she'll hire that out.
Smart. She's smart. Yeah. They're always smarter than we are. I love that. Well, how old are your kids?
I've got 19, going to be 17 this month, 14 and 12. Two girls, 2 boys.
Are they showing any interest in wanting to be a part of the business? Or are they still?
My oldest has started an LLC and is working for herself, but involved with cleaning, doing grounds work. She's into photography, and she's involved with a young man that she likes a lot, and she's figuring out a long distance relationship for herself.
I was taking a note out of your book, huh?
Yes. And in the reverse, well, actually the same way, because he's from Michigan, but
oh man,
he's out here visiting right now, and we're getting to know him, which is a great thing, seeing history repeat itself in that way. But they've got to figure out, the path that God's going to lay out for them. She's very capable. She's ambitious. She could, if she wants to. I basically encourage my children that this path is open. And my next boy is going to be 17. He's worked in several parts of the business as a summer laborer, getting a taste for it, then did mechanics this summer at a different place. They all have opportunities if they want, but they're going to earn it. It's not handed to them. That's kind of the principle I'm going to lay out. And someday if they show that they're capable of running it, I hope I have a business that they can be a part of if they want it. But I also encourage them, if your passion's in another place, follow it. Go do it. Because it's rewarding, obviously, to start something from scratch or do your own thing that you're excited about.
What are your thoughts on people who let their kids come into the business who haven't ever really experienced working outside of the business and doing their own thing. In my personal opinion, I've seen that not be so great because they just don't know what they don't know, right? And they're a little bit jaded. But then I've seen those ones where they've gone and they spent 5, 7, 8, 10 years on their own, doing their own thing, working for other people, building their own business, and then they come in, they definitely respect it a lot more. What's your thought on that? How would you approach that if they're like, Dad, we want to come take over the business? Would you be like, yes, or hey, you got to go get some experience under the belt?
Well, there's a lot of families that are represented at our place, and I think it would be foolish to take someone in their early 20s even and expect them to be put in place where they could run something that's already a fairly mature business and they're making executive level decisions. I don't think it's fair for the people that are looking for opportunity coming up. And I think they would then have to trust that, this is in the hands of a 20-year-old and where are we going as a company? So I don't think that would be wise. I would want them to come up like somebody else, through the bottom, maybe get their CDL and drive truck until they get an opportunity to dispatch or do something else in the company. And then they would have to show that they're capable, and they might, like any other general manager or manager in the company, maybe get that opportunity and then say, okay, we're going to groom him or her for leadership at some point. That's going to be an earned thing. Just, if they're not the most talented and they're not good for leadership, I don't really think, they can work in that company for a long time and have opportunity, but I don't think they should lead it because you've got too many people that are trusting in them to carry this on. So,
well, yeah. And honestly, it might not end up being their skill set. Leadership and visionary type of seat in the company that's a heavy burden. You need visionaries, right?
That's right.
10 ideas a week, 9 of them are garbage. You need one really good idea, somebody who can see it going forward. But then there's also those people that are all gas and no brake. They're big vision and they're just very impractical. They can't actually get it done, in the trenches. Yeah. So, I think that's good wisdom because I do think that our audience is listening sometimes thinking about that of like legacy and what am I going to pass on? And it sounds great, but there's other people who helped you grow that company from day one who've been there longer than your kid has, and that's the quickest way to just lose trust with the whole audience.
Yeah, talk about and I'm not sure that they're going to be respecting their leader either.
No, not at all. One of the things you said a little while ago that triggered a thought for me is when you started having kids, your wife stepped out of the business in the capacity. She's not like, slinging rock anymore. And you said we're going to be a single income household. And I thought the way that you said that was interesting because it implied to me that you look at owning the business and being an employee of the business differently. And I think that not everybody thinks that way, right? So I'd love to just unpack a little bit of your knowledge and wisdom because that's how I think, right? Hey, I can be the owner of the business. The only thing I'm entitled to as the owner are profits. Everything else is a role or a function of the business that I have to fill, which means some people might be in front of me and I report to them and vice versa. But what are your thoughts? How did you do that, right? How did you go from, hey, I'm driving the trucks, how do I decide to what to pay myself, to, hey, I'm ready to deploy capital back in and hire more people? What did that look like for you? And I guess what is some of your philosophy and thoughts around being a business owner and being an employee of your own business?
Yeah, good question. I saw myself as when I'm a truck driver, I should earn a truck driver wage. And when I'm a manager, I'm entitled to a manager wage. I was very keenly aware that if I didn't put money back in, it's going to really stunt my growth and my ability to take risk right out of it. So we paid ourselves and continue to pay ourselves, I would say, a fairly meager salary or hourly, however we look at it. And, now I'm at a position where we try to maximize investments with 401k and Roth. So I want to make sure I've got enough coming through and it's a full match because it's a perk, it's a benefit, and I'm giving it to my employees. Well, we should take advantage and save for the future too. I don't know what's going to come. So we're still in that stage. We're 20 years in, and have I have had it where I'm like, okay, I'm going to build this shop next to my house. I'm going to take out a little extra this year to pay for that. That's a rarity for me.
Right.
We're doing everything else. So I see myself as pay myself what you would hire someone else to come in and do your job for,
Right.
and not more than that. So I think that makes you responsible, makes you live on a budget like other people, and you're in the same seat they are when they say, "Oh, I'm sure you've got, well, the business did great this year." I'm like, "Well, it's all back in the business. It went into the next truck. It's paying down this note. It's not mine.
It's a huge misconception.
That's the company's money. Mine is what I took home in my paycheck."
Yep.
So that's my philosophy.
No, that's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Man, I could run this podcast for literally another hour just asking you questions because you just got so much knowledge, but I won't do that to you. I know you had other stuff to do today, but I do want to get your encouragement for the audience. So say somebody's scrolling through LinkedIn or social media or whatever, and they're going to get a soundbite of this podcast, and they're going to go, "Man, I want to go listen to what this guy has to say." What advice or encouragement would you give to somebody who is looking to make the entrepreneurial leap?
So understand it will be difficult when you start, and that there are better years ahead. I would say it's like we talked about in marriage.
Yeah.
It's usually more challenging at the front end. You're getting to know each other, and there's a lot you need to learn. You need to be humble because you're not going to do well if you're not, especially in that relationship. So you're going to grind, you're going to learn, but understand that the more you put into it, the more it means to you and the more rewarding it is. And building a great team is a reward in and of itself. To be able to be around people that you enjoy being around and a part of a team every day that feels like your thing is its own reward. You don't need money for that, right? That's just a special thing that not everybody gets to do. And you get to put your stamp on it. You get to influence it. You get to set a culture that you believe in, which for us is a faith-based, and where we respect each other and care about each other. And I get to share in that. So those would be some of the rewards that it's hard to look at for the first time when you're going through it, especially on the front end. But is it worth it? It's your personality. If you're not happy with where you're at, how long do you want to stay that way? And is it something you have to do and do wisely? Yes, because you've probably got a family to take care of. So do it and prepare for it. If it takes you 5 years to jump ship from a company, then take 5 years to do it so that it goes well on the front end. Don't just jump in with no plan and no thought and go, "Well, I wish I want to be a business owner." That doesn't mean it's going to go well for you.
No way.
And so for me, I've had a little bit of a different leap because I started young, and I was thankful for that. But I've also started multiple things later in life and got a similar joy all over again. I didn't do it because I needed more money. I did it because I'm passionate about starting that new thing and creating a new team and culture. And I keep finding it to be very enjoyable. So if that makes you excited, then what are you waiting for?
I love it. It's worth it. There's no shortcuts. And tomorrow's a day that never comes.
Good points.
Dude,
Enjoyed it.
thank you. This was awesome. Appreciate it. Hopefully in maybe like a year, we'll have you back as a guest because you're a killer guest. You got so much knowledge, and I'm excited to just hear more about how on-demand flat work's going. And I genuinely appreciate you and admire you, man. So thank you very much.
And thanks for doing this.
You
Good
bet,
cause.
dude. Thanks, dude.
All right.